Hello there, GCSEers. Our final part of this miracles unit is where we look at a man called David Hume. Now you might notice he's been appearing in the videos all the way through the unit, and that's because you really need to get to know this man's face. So here it is, David Hume. Now David Hume was an 18th century Scottish philosopher, and he believed a number of different things, and one of the things he believed was that God didn't exist, and therefore there was no such thing as miracles. And he believed that in a time when there were not many people who believed that God didn't exist. And so we learn a great deal from him about miracles. And he came up with 4 arguments against miracles, saying that the miracles were wrong. These are the 4 arguments. He said there's never enough evidence for miracles. He said that the laws of nature have been witnessed for many hundreds of years, and there's overwhelming evidence that people do not appear in 2 places at once or rise from the dead. He said that if a miracle is going to be accepted, then there has to be sufficient evidence to outweigh the evidence for the laws of nature. This cannot happen, so miracles cannot happen. Okay, so number 1 is there's never enough evidence. Number 2, he says the witnesses were unreliable. He said they came from barbarous nations and were biased because they wanted miracles to happen. If you think about someone like Sally McCloy, she wanted a miracle to happen, and so exaggerated and even lied possibly about what they had seen. Possibly the disciples, after Jesus' resurrection, wanted Jesus to rise from the dead, and so actually believed it even though it wasn't true. He said the witnesses were uneducated. He said they were reported by primitive and uneducated people, willing to accept any extraordinary events, a bit like the God of the gaps really, where we put God in a gap in our knowledge. We believe that these miraculous things like the sun rising is due to God. And you could argue that Saint Bernadette is one such person. She actually was a very primitive and backward young lady who believed that Mary, Jesus' mum, appeared to her. And finally, he said number 4, religions themselves depend on miracles. He said that the world of religion depends on miracles to prove their claims to the truth. Think about Christianity, for example. It claims that this man, Jesus, came down to earth and performed lots of miracles and ultimately died and rose from the dead as a miracle. And he said it cancels each other out because the religion itself, for its existence, relies on the miracle happening. So you can't trust it. Now, many people have come to argue against Hume, and this is particularly important because often you'll get a question that will say, can you argue against what Hume says? Now, the idea of never enough evidence, and I suppose that's true, because if miracles happened every day, then they wouldn't be miracles. All right, they'd just be people would just see them as normal. And one of the arguments that Hume says, because he was living in the 18th century, he said that the ability to fly it goes against the laws of nature. Whereas nowadays human beings do fly, aeroplanes do fly. So the existence of flight cannot be accepted in Hume's day, but now it does happen. So we could argue against Hume's view there. As the witnesses are unreliable, founders of religion warn against putting too much trust in a miracle and stress that they must be viewed with care. Roman Catholics, for example, thoroughly investigate each claim of a miracle in Lourdes, and then it's only acceptable as a miracle if it's trusted and reliable and by scientific discovery of the time and other different tests to check whether the witnesses are reliable. The witnesses are uneducated. Well, there's millions of people across the world, educated people, who believe in things like the resurrection of Jesus. Doctors and lawyers believe that Jesus rose from the dead. So they're not uneducated people, and they definitely believe that these things happen. There's many, even scientists, who believe in the Christian miracle of the resurrection. Now, the final one, religion depends on miracles. Hume suggested that all religions depend on miracles for evidence of their teachings. This is not true. Religions that accept miracles, they mostly just support the beliefs and teachings of the faith. Many religions do not depend on miracles as proof of their teachings. Now, this is quite a difficult one because a lot of the big religions do, apart from possibly Judaism, which doesn't really rely on a miracle, apart from if you saw the creation of the world itself as a miracle. And many people do see the creation of the world as a miracle, which leads me on to what I'm going to do at the end of this video. Now, at the end of this video, I'm going to give you 2 what do you thinks. And that's because the first one is obviously, do you agree with Hume? Do you think there's never enough evidence for miracles, the witnesses are unreliable, they're uneducated, and religion itself depends on miracles, and therefore miracles do not happen? What do you think on that one? And secondly, I'd like to just introduce you to this quote. It's a quote by a man called Albert Einstein. And Albert Einstein, he said that either everything is a miracle or nothing is. Which ultimately I suppose is quite true. Think about yourself. The chances of you actually being here are millions and billions to one. Let alone living on a planet that's absolutely amazing and unlikely and, the only one we know of with any living evidence on it. Let alone the fact of your mum and dad meeting in order to have you. That's seemingly impossible. And if a miracle is the impossible becoming possible, then everything is a miracle. Isn't it? What do you think?